Hi, I'm Nathaniel. It's July 2024, and I'm going to go over 6 different cameras that you can find for under $100. All of these are going to be great for learning photography because they have interchangeable lenses and manual controls. Those are generally the most important things you need to learn or need to have so you can learn photography skills. Prices are going to be based off of eBay and the completed items filter. This will show what things have actually sold for, and I think this is a good way to gauge market price for things. That's not to say that you cannot find great deals other places, such as Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Kijiji, Gumtree, Yahoo Auctions, thrift stores, estate sales, garage sales, flea markets. There's so many places you can find a good deal. If you start looking, you'll eventually be able to find one. The one piece of advice I have is to look for complete kits. I like to think of these as Christmas kits because that's probably when most of them were originally purchased. But what's nice about this is you don't have to worry about compatibility. A lens will be included. Hopefully a memory card will be included. Battery charger, and that is important because none of these can charge over USB. You'll need to remove the battery and have a charger for it. And then another thing to look out for is compact flash memory cards. I feel like the card readers for those are less common, so that might be something that you have to purchase, which would add to the price. And trying to keep it under $100, you want to look for any ways to save money as possible. There will be affiliate links in the description to all the cameras that I recommend. In addition to that, I'll have a link to my website where I will have links to manuals, product pages, and any important information that someone that is a new owner of one of the cameras would find helpful. The first camera I have is the Canon EOS Digital Rebel, also known as the Canon 300D, Canon Kiss Digital, and I believe it was also even marketed as the DS6041, which is the Canon product number, and it's just crazy how many different names Canon slapped on the camera depending on the market where it was sold. It's from 2003. It has a 6.3 megapixel sensor, and the MSRP was $999, and that was with the 18 to 55 millimeter lens. The battery is a BP-511A. Any additional letters, if it was a B, C, whatever after that, is just the same battery with a probably slightly higher capacity and later manufactured date. I'm pretty sure all the batteries are discontinued, so you're going to have to be looking for third-party replacements. The charger is a CB-5L, and this will be needed as the camera cannot be charged via USB. You will need to use a battery charger. As far as memory cards go, it uses compact flash and can use cards with a maximum capacity of 32 gigabytes. This is because it uses the FAT32 file system. If you try to use a card with a larger capacity, you run into issues and the camera will not be able to function. If you'd like to save some money and you already have an SD card that is 32 gigabytes or smaller, you can use an SD to compact flash card adapter. Works just as well. I've tested it in the camera. It's a great way to save a little bit of money because these are less expensive than compact flash cards. So in addition to no charging, it has USB 1.1 transfer speeds, which are going to be very slow. You're definitely going to want to be able to remove the memory card, whether it be a CF card or an SD card in that adapter, from the camera to transfer photos to a phone or computer. So you'll probably want to have a memory card reader. The camera has an APS-C CMOS sensor, and it is notable because this is the first model to use the Canon EFS lens mount. That has a 1.6x crop factor when compared to a full frame body, like this Canon 5D Mark II. I've personally never really felt like Canon really took the EFS mount seriously. There's not very many primed lenses available for it, but there is a good selection of zooms. The combination of inherent budget restrictions when you're looking for cameras under $100 and the limited offerings that Canon made make the lists of lenses pretty short. EF lenses can be used and they have a 1.6x crop factor. There are multiple versions of the 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens. The one I have does not have image stabilization. I would definitely look for one that does, because there's not going to be a large price difference, if at all, between the different versions. So get the best tech in there that you can. I have the second version of the 50 millimeter f1.8 lens, and this one has a metal mount. There is a Nifty 50, the plastic fantastic. It is the earlier version. It's all black and the mount is plastic though. This is a lens that I would definitely recommend everyone consider, especially if you have any plans to upgrade in the future. If it turns out you like photography, it works great on my Canon 5D Mark II. Beyond that, your choice for a wide zoom is basically the Canon EFS 10 to 18 millimeter f4, 5 to 5.6. The 24 millimeter is another choice for a lens that would keep the shooting experience pretty small and would be great for an upgraded camera in the future. There are multiple versions of the 55 to 250 millimeter zoom lens. It's a kit lens that was on a bunch of different cameras, so this is one that you can get a great deal for used and will give you that telephoto range if you're looking for that. The 40 millimeter f2.8 is just going to be a smaller, thinner lens than the 50 millimeter and give you a little wider field of view. The 70-300 is another great option for a telephoto lens, and this will be useful on other cameras. The Canon EF 70-300 is another great option for a telephoto lens. It's a full frame lens, so you won't be restricted on future camera upgrades. I would recommend avoiding the 75 to 300 millimeter if you come across it. This is widely considered Canon's worst lens, and this is the reason I bought the camera in the first place, because it was bundled with this lens as a cheap way to get it, and I wanted this for some fun. And the entry-level macro lens is the Canon EF 60mm f2.8. I do believe Nikon has some less expensive options, so the next camera might be a better choice if you're looking for macro. Next is the Nikon D50. It's from 2006. It has a 6.1 megapixel CCD APS-C sensor. It originally had an MSRP of $899 with an 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens. There are several versions of those lenses, so if you have a camera that doesn't have one, you're looking for one, make sure it has VR, vibration reduction, which is optical image stabilization, but not an AP, not an AFP lens. The AFS lenses might be okay. The lens compatibility is a bit of a mess. I'll get to that, but let's go over the basic stats first. It uses an EN-EL3 battery. It can't be charged via USB, so you'll need an MH18 or MH19 battery charger. The D50 can use SD memory cards, but it is limited to the original specification. That uses the FAT12 or FAT16 file system, which means it is limited to a maximum capacity of 2 gigabytes in size. If you attempt to use a memory card with a larger capacity than that, the camera will have errors and it will not work. So keep that in mind when buying one. It's good if you get an SD card bundled with it, because that should hopefully be 2 gigabytes or less in capacity. It also cannot shoot video. So before I get into recommended lenses that are available for the camera, keep in mind that compatibility with the F-mount is a complete mess. There will be a link to the chart so you can see and check which lenses are actually compatible with the camera and which are not. This is actually an issue because there are so many differences that will or will not work with the camera, and then if you want to potentially upgrade, keep your lenses, the cameras that you are able to go to can be limited. The D50 does have a built-in autofocus motor, so it can use early AF and AFD lenses. You want to avoid AFP, and it can be an issue because there's so many versions of some of these lenses. So keep that in mind. So again, to start off with, the 18-55 is the kit lens. There are lots of versions of these, and they are the most plentiful. Look for one with VR if you're buying one that is not included with a body. The 55 to 200 millimeter lens, again, look for VR. This was a second kit lens in a 2-kit bundle, so there will be lots of those around. For a prime lens, there's the 50 millimeter 1.8D. This needs a built-in motor drive, which again the D50 has. This is my favorite cheap 50 millimeter lens. While I have the Canon 5D Mark II with the Canon's version of it, I like the Nikon one a little bit better, and I have been thinking of getting a Nikon body just to use that lens. With the D50, there's going to be a 1.5x crop factor, so the field of view is going to be equivalent to 75 millimeters on a full frame camera. If you want that 50 millimeter field of view on the D50, I would suggest looking for a 35 millimeter 1.8G lens. It is a DX lens, which means it was designed for APS-C camera bodies. And then from there are more options that are kind of pressing the budget, considering we're looking for things under $100. Overall, I think the D50 would be a great choice, a great camera to get your hands on. There's lots of room to upgrade, and it's always going to be in demand. So if you decide that, hey, this isn't something that I want to keep, someone will want to take it off your hands. The Pentax K110D is interesting because it uses AA batteries. So if you have good quality rechargeable ones, you don't have to track those down. That does come at the price of, it's going to be a little heavier, as the rechargeable nickel metal hydride batteries are going to be heavier than the lithium ion ones. But beyond that, it's from 2006. It has a 6.1 megapixel APS-C CCD sensor. The MSRP was $599, and that included a 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens. In terms of memory cards, it can use SD cards, but it uses the SDHC specification, which means that you are limited to cards with a maximum capacity of 32 gigabytes. If you try to use a larger card than that, the camera will have errors and will not work. So 32 gigabytes or lower, and 32 gigabytes is what you're going to come across. They're actually cheaper usually than 16 or 8 or smaller capacities. So 32 gigabyte card is what you want to go with. It cannot record video. The lens mount is the KAF mount, which again, like Nikon, they're going to have to do some reading to make sure you find a lens that is compatible, because this has autofocus capabilities where some of the older K-mount lenses don't, because it goes back to film era cameras. So while you do have good compatibility in theory, you might give some things up, or lenses might not be totally compatible. It's one of the downsides to the Pentax K-mount. Looking at lenses, there's not going to be as large of a selection, and it can sometimes be difficult to find things. Pentax was sold and swapped between companies a bunch. They're now owned by Ricoh. So for a while, sales weren't that great. So you looking on the used market may or may not be very successful depending on where you're at. So of course the 18 to 55 millimeter is a kit lens. If you get Pentax DA lenses, they should all be compatible, and they'll be made for APS-C sensors and be able to autofocus. I believe the 50 to 200 millimeter was another kit lens. You know, I don't know what to say about the lenses. This should be pretty standard at this point in terms of what you're getting, and based on the price of the camera, there's just not that many options. To me, the Pentax 110D is a camera that you just want to jump on if you're able to find a good deal on it. The memory card compatibility is pretty good. The AA batteries is great because you should have those. You might have rechargeable ones. They're easier to get than some of the now discontinued lithium-ion batteries for other brands. That being said, if you're thinking, oh, I want to take into account the ability to upgrade in the future, that's going to be easier with Nikon or Canon. Pentax sales weren't great in the US. If you're in a different country, maybe they're better, but here I just wouldn't be like, this is something that you're going to easily be able to swap gear and upgrade from. The Sony A100 is interesting because it's basically the closest thing you're going to get to a working Konica Minolta DSLR. That's because when DSLRs started coming out, Konica Minolta, their first two cameras, the Maxim 5D and Maxim 7D, all had to get recalled because they had the first black frame problem where try to take a picture, the frame would be black, take another one, it'd be fine, and eventually they deteriorated to where they were all black. This led to the camera division being sold to Sony. That is why the A mount that the Sony A100 uses is the same as the Konica Minolta A mount, and the camera is very similar to the 5D. It was released in 2006 with a 10.2 megapixel CCD APS-C sensor. The original MSRP was $999, and that came with a 18 to 70 millimeter kit lens. To go over some of the specs real quick, the battery is a NP-FM55H, and you will need a BC-VM10 charger. It cannot be charged via USB. No video, the Sony A mount. The memory card situation is interesting with the camera because I believe there was a Memory Stick Pro Duo to compact flash adapter that you could be used with the card, and it doesn't have dual card slots. Some of the other Sony models can use a Memory Stick Pro Duo or an SD card in the slot. I think that this is only compact flash cards. I'm not sure if the SD to compact flash card adapter would work. That would make life a lot easier. Compact flash cards can be fairly expensive, and I believe the camera is going to be limited to having a maximum capacity of 32 gigabytes. Using something larger than that is probably going to cause errors. The Sony memory card Pro Duos, I always try to avoid them. It's a proprietary Sony format. They are expensive, readers are difficult to find, and the performance is worse than SD cards. So unless the camera comes bundled with them and a memory card reader, I would go for compact flash cards. Older Minolta A-mount lenses that were designed for film cameras can be used. These are going to be full frame lenses, so there will be a 1.5x crop when using them on the Sony A100. I haven't gone through and looked at those lenses and included them. I think you're probably going to be better off with some of the Sony offerings, especially considering how inexpensive they are. So while not the kit lens for this camera, there is an 18 to 55 millimeter that you can find. For a prime lens, the Minolta 50mm f1.7 is going to be a great choice. Rendering from the lens is beautiful. Then there is the 18 to 70 millimeter if it is not included with the camera. There's also a Sony 50mm f1.8 that's going to be very similar to the Minolta. The 55 to 200 millimeter was another kit lens, so these are going to be quite plentiful and easy to find. 55 to 300 if you want some more reach, and then I guess a few other options if your budget is larger. So I think that the Sony is definitely a good option if you're wanting to pick up a few extra lenses because they're plentiful and inexpensive. Though it's not really a system you want to get into to upgrade, there's not a ton of high-end glass around, and the stuff that's already out there is already snatched up by people that were already using the A-mount and are going to continue to use it because it was around long enough, now discontinued, but Sony released some excellent cameras for it that people still use today. The Nikon J10 is from the Nikon 1 system that only lasted 7 years. It has a 1-inch sensor, which is a 2.7x crop, but beyond that, the specs on it are pretty good compared to the competition, though the ergonomics are going to be a little bit lacking. It was released in 2011 with a 10.1 megapixel 1-inch CMOS sensor that is capable of recording 1080p 30 video. It had an MSRP of $649 with a 10 to 30 millimeter kit lens. Taking a closer look at some of the specs, it uses an EN-EL20 battery, and you're going to need an MH27 charger because it cannot be charged via USB. The memory card situation is great. It uses SDXC memory cards, which means you can use cards with a capacity of up to 2 terabytes. So I don't think that you're going to end up buying a memory card that costs more than the camera. So the world is your oyster in terms of memory cards. I would recommend something 64 gigabytes UHS 1 if you need to buy one. Beyond that, the brand or whatever shouldn't matter. In terms of lenses, what there are is what you're going to get, and some of them can be difficult to find. The more expensive, the harder they're going to be able to find, and that's one of the downsides, because while they are small, they're not significantly smaller than micro four thirds lenses, which are more available, less expensive, higher quality. Kind of feel like micro four thirds really wins out in the upgradable category because, again, the system was only around for 7 years. There's a very limited number of bodies and lenses, but I'll bring them up and we can take a look at them. Here's all the lenses that were released for the system. Lots of the lenses can have an issue with a ribbon cable breaking due to how they were designed. So finding working lenses can be difficult. You're not going to have a lot of options. I really wouldn't recommend trying to track one of these down. It's simply an example of a camera you can find for under $100. The fact that the system's dead, you can't really upgrade. The lenses are going to be difficult to find. It's a lot of drawbacks, but it's kind of the trade-off you have to deal with. The tech is probably more impressive than everything else that I have mentioned, but I would still be hesitant to really hunt after one of these. If you find a great deal, obviously go ahead and take it. And finally, there's the Panasonic G10. This one is really going to be pushing that under $100 limit. I think that it might generally be a little above that, $110, $120, but this was the only micro four thirds camera that I could find that would be close to being into the $100 budget. It was released in 2010 and it has a 12.1 megapixel CMOS sensor. Again, micro four thirds, so you're getting that 2x crop factor. It had an MSRP of $599 with a kit lens. So jump into the specs and then I'll get into the lenses. It uses a DMW BLB13 battery. No USB charging, so you will need a DE-A49 battery charger. It can record 720p video at 30 frames a second, which is better than if it was interlaced. And like the Nikon J1, it can use SDXC memory cards. That means any SD memory card up to 2 terabytes in size will be compatible. Capacities that are larger than that will cause an error with the camera that will prevent it from working. My recommendation would be any 64 gigabyte SD card with UHS 1. That'll be fast enough and more than enough capacity for anything you could want to do with the camera. The micro four thirds lens mount is why this camera made the list. At every price point, there are zooms and primes available that can do whatever you need. All of the lenses shown are available for under $100, and I own several of them. To start with, here is the 14mm f2.5, and it is just incredible how small the lens is, and this was why I like micro four thirds so much. You could have a 28mm equivalent lens in your pocket, always ready to go. From there's a 25mm f1.7 that is going to be the equivalent of a 50mm, and again, it's just incredible that this is available under $100. The Panasonic 12 to 32mm lens is an engineering marvel. The thing is so light and so small, just absolutely incredible, something that you can always have with you. And then the 14 to 45 and 14 to 42 were both kit lenses. I'm not sure if the power zoom 14 to 42 was or not, but it is another option, especially if you want to be able to do video. And then the Panasonic 45 to 150 is a second kit lens. Olympus has the 17mm f2.8, and this is going to be a 35mm equivalent. I have both the 14-42 and 40-150 kit lenses, and while they aren't the most incredible things ever, considering the price to performance is absolutely incredible, especially with the telephoto zoom. The lightweight, low price, really hard to beat. And then there are a couple body cap lenses. The 9mm, which is a fisheye lens, but the image quality isn't very good. It's equivalent to a toy lens. And the Olympus 15mm f8, which has noticeably better image quality. And there are other third-party micro four thirds lenses that are also under $100. That's what makes the camera such a strong option if you need specialty lenses, if you need a fisheye, if you need a telephoto, if you want something for portraits. The lens options in the micro four thirds ecosystem are going to be the least expensive. It's the easiest way to get in. There's lots of great camera bodies, but that under $100 budget might not hold. And that will do it for this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I will go over cameras in the $150, $200, $250 price range and then probably branch out from there. So I will see you in the next one.